Hello and welcome to Good or Bad. Freddy Krueger. We have seen it all from you. The ups, the downs, the downright weird. But no matter how bad things got, each Nightmare movie tried to do something different. And then this remake happened. Yes, this is director Samuel Byers' A Nightmare on Elm Street. If there was ever a perfect example of a movie that doesn't need to exist, this is it. Because the original movie has aged really well, and still holds up to this day. We didn't need a remake. A reimagining or reboot, yeah, sure, there's potential in that. But a pure remake? No. Just no. Right, so let's start with the cast then. First up, I think it's only fair we talk about Freddy Krueger himself, who is played by Jackie Earle Haley. And in fairness to him, I thought the casting was spot on. He is a great actor and could absolutely nail the part of Freddy. If only he didn't look like the Mummy and wasn't given a rehash of the original movie to star in. That being said, it's always going to be Robert Englund's role. He's who we think of when we think Freddy Krueger. But none of us are getting any younger, and eventually you do have to recast. Then we have Rooney Mara as Nancy, who is okay, I guess? She is pretty forgettable, but she wasn't bad or anything. And then we have Kyle Gallner, who plays her love interest Quentin, who again is not as good as the original version of the character, but just like Mara as Nancy, he was okay. Actually, that's one thing I want to say for the acting in general. None of it is bad. It's just they feel like pale imitations of what came before, which sums up this movie perfectly. So, the story. We all know it already, but because I enjoy doing so, I'm going to go through it for the bajillionth time. The dreams of the kids of Springwood are being haunted by an evil force, who begins to mentally torture them and pick them off one by one, until Nancy and Quentin figure out who it is. Freddy Krueger, who in this version was accused of paedophilia, but got away with it because of a technicality. But the parents of Springwood wouldn't let that stand, so they took the law into their own hands and tortured him. And now he seeks vengeance by killing their kids in their dreams, because he can do that now. Actually, I think it's far better not knowing why Freddy has his powers. Yeah, that was something alright. And as well as learning who Freddy is, they come to the conclusion that they made it all up. You see, Nancy and the gang were his victims when they were younger. You know, I don't like this whole subject, so screw you, movie, for bringing it up. But yeah, they were his victims, and apparently they told their parents, and that led to him getting lynch mobbed after the legal system failed. But like I was saying, Nancy and Quentin arrived at the conclusion that Freddy was innocent, which is a damn good twist that the original movie never did. In that, he was just clear-cut guilty of being a child killer. So I like that they introduced this into the remake, and there is so much you can do with that, such as making Freddy a sympathetic villain. This movie could have actually made us feel bad for him, and that is something none of the other movies have ever done. I mean, they made us feel sorry for him, but that was in another way. The kind of way that makes us want to drag the franchise out back and shoot it between its sad, lost and desperate eyes. But yeah, anyway, I have to say, Freddy being innocent is a really clever move, because it helps distinguish this new version of the character. It is just a shame that they pull a complete 180 and say it was Freddy messing with them. And he really is just a bad guy. How bloody original. So thank you, movie, thank you, for coming up with a genuinely good idea and essentially going, look, we've got a really good idea, but we're not going to do it. Instead, all we're going to do is point out how good it would have been if we did. You moron. Screw you, movie. Screw you. So, then they just defeat Freddy and that's that. Can I let you in on a little secret? This movie's a waste of time! I mean, yeah, sure, they made it to do something with the franchise and make a bit of money. But what's in it for the audience? We get the same story, the same characters, and not much else. Okay, let's not just focus on the negatives, even though that is way more fun. What does work in this movie? Some of the death scenes are cool. Thomas Dekkers, for instance, he plays Jesse, and his death scene is, well, like I just said, it's cool. And honestly, his death in this movie is better than his character's counterpart in the original. Also, we get to see a vlogger who was being haunted by Freddy, and we see his various videos leading up to his death. And I thought that was pretty cool. But more importantly, it is the one time the movie took advantage of something the original movie or its many sequels could not. It tapped into the age of social media and incorporated it in a believable way. And this created a really cool and original death scene for the Nightmare franchise. And on top of that, it was probably the easiest death scene to film. So yeah, it was a good idea. I just wish the movie did more things along those lines. Well, that about summed up everything I liked about this film. Back to the negatives! We get recreations of scenes from the original movie, but this time they're all CGI'd up. Isn't that good? Such as the bedroom wall scene. And it looks better in the 80s. Well, if I was a 2010 movie that just got showed up by a film from 1984, I'd feel a bit embarrassed right about now, wouldn't you? So let's talk about what's different. And I think we can all agree that number one is that this movie's a load of old donkey droppings. And number two is that Freddy is no longer a child killer, which in my opinion makes this movie feel dirtier.
You're my little Nancy.
I mean, Robert Englund said it perfectly. Being a child killer? That's bad enough. It works perfectly to create a villain. There is no need to make Freddy a paedophile. And I completely agree with him. But what is interesting is that originally, Freddy Krueger was going to be a paedophile. But it was changed because of a real-life, ongoing case at the time. So I don't know whether they just thought doing it this time around made the movie pack more of a punch, or were they just trying to see Craven's original idea through to the bitter end? But ultimately, I just thought it was unnecessary. Another thing that is different is that Quentin survives this movie, whereas in the original, Glenn died, which is fine. But what stings is that out of all of the scenes they recreated in this movie, the one I would have wanted to see most of all is this one, which was Glenn's death. Granted, we did get this scene which referenced Glenn's death, but still, it is nowhere near as good. But back to differences. Even as something that was changed, Quentin surviving is a fairly small change, which sums up just how very same old story this movie really is. So yeah, this is a bad film, no question. That being said, the cast are pretty decent. That also being said, they're never given anything all that good to do. A lot of the effects, especially the death scenes, can be pretty cool, but some of the CGI is just unnecessary, like the goddamn wall scene. Last but not least, it added nothing to the franchise at all. So there you go. If you want to watch the original Nightmare on Elm Street but your copy is broken, just whatever you do, don't watch this one. You have been watching Good or Bad, and I'll see you next time.